A wedding is supposed to be one of the happiest days of your life. Mine started that way. The hall was beautifully decorated with flowers and soft lights. Guests smiled, music filled the room, and everyone waited for the celebration to begin. I looked across the room and saw my parents. They were sitting quietly at a small table near the back. My father wore the only suit he owned. My mother had spent months sewing her own dress because she wanted to look beautiful for my special day. Seeing them made me smile. They had sacrificed everything to raise me. They worked long hours, skipped vacations, and often went without things they needed, so I could have a better future. Today was supposed to be their moment too, but I didn't know what was happening behind the scenes. As more guests arrived, my husband's family began taking control of everything. They changed the seating plan. They moved decorations. They gave orders to the staff, as if they owned the entire event. Nobody questioned them. Everyone simply followed. Then something happened that made my heart sink. My parents were politely asked to leave their seats. They're reserved for important family members, someone whispered. Important family members. The words echoed in my mind. My parents quietly stood up without arguing. They picked up their gifts and walked toward an empty corner. They smiled so no one would notice their pain. But I noticed, and my heart broke. As the ceremony continued, I couldn't stop looking at my parents. They clapped when everyone else clapped. They smiled when everyone else smiled. But I knew those smiles. They were hiding tears. I remember my childhood, my father working double shifts, my mother staying awake all night, sewing clothes for extra money. Every birthday, they gave me presents while pretending they didn't need anything themselves. They had always put me first. Now, on the biggest day of my life, they were being treated like strangers. Meanwhile, my husband's relatives laughed loudly, taking photos at the front of the hall. They introduced themselves as the people who had made this wedding possible. It wasn't true. My parents had quietly paid for much of it over many years of saving. But they never wanted recognition. They only wanted to see me happy. The music played. The speeches continued. No one seemed to notice the two people standing quietly against the wall. Except me. Inside, something was changing. I knew I couldn't stay silent much longer. The reception began. Guests enjoyed dinner, while the master of ceremonies invited family members to give speeches. One by one, my husband's relatives walked onto the stage. They talked about success, about status, about their family's achievements. Not once did anyone mention my parents. Each word hurt more than the last. I looked toward the corner again. My mother gently wiped away a tear when she thought no one was watching. My father placed his hand over hers and smiled softly. That simple gesture shattered my heart. I realized something. If I stayed silent today, I would regret it for the rest of my life. The speeches ended. The microphone was placed back on its stand. Without thinking, I stood up. The room became quiet. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me. I slowly walked onto the stage and reached for the microphone. I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I looked directly at my parents. My first thank you today isn't for the decorations. It isn't for the flowers. It isn't even for this beautiful wedding. The room became completely silent. My first thank you belongs to the two people standing in the back. Everyone turned around. My parents looked surprised. I pointed toward them. Those two people gave up their dreams so I could chase mine. They worked until their hands hurt. They hid their struggles so I would never have to worry. They taught me kindness, honesty, and love. My voice began to break. And today they were treated as if they didn't belong. The silence grew heavier. Some guests lowered their heads. Others looked uncomfortable. I wasn't finished. If anyone deserves the best seats in this room, it's them. For a second, nobody moved. Then something incredible happened. One guest slowly stood and began clapping. Another followed, then another. Within moments, the entire wedding hall was on its feet. People applauded with tears in their eyes. My husband walked onto the stage beside me. He gently took my hand. Then he walked directly toward my parents. Without saying a word, he escorted them to the front table. He personally pulled out their chairs. The room erupted into applause again. Even members of his own family looked ashamed. Some quietly apologized. Others simply looked away. My mother couldn't stop crying. My father whispered, "You didn't have to do this." I smiled. Yes, I did. Because respect should never depend on wealth or status. It should depend on love. The rest of the evening felt different. Laughter returned. The atmosphere became warm. Guests spent time talking with my parents, hearing stories about my childhood and thanking them for raising such a caring person. When it was time for the final dance, I walked over to my parents first. I hugged them tightly. "I am who I am because of you," I whispered. My father smiled through tears. My mother gently touched my face the way she did when I was little. At that moment, I realized the greatest wedding gift wasn't jewelry, money, or expensive presents. It was having the courage to honor the people who loved me long before anyone else did. As the night came to an end, many guests said they would never forget what happened. Neither would I, because weddings are not only about joining two families. They are about remembering the people who carried you when you couldn't walk on your own. And if the world ever forgets to honor those people, don't stay silent. Grab the microphone and remind everyone where true love begins.
Hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a new emotional story. Your support means more than words can say, and it helps us continue bringing these untold stories to life.